Hey y'all, I'm Molly and welcome to Minnie Acres Farm. If this is your first time here, if you've been here before, welcome back. It's almost the end of September here in Northwest Florida. Normally it's pretty hot this time of year, but we seem to be having a cooler than normal season right now. So while it feels pretty good out here this morning, I'm going to show you some of my seedlings that are coming up. We're going to look at my sweet potatoes and see if they're ready to dig up. And I'm going to show you my experiment of trying to grow lettuces in mini greenhouses. So stay tuned for that. It is time to do a little inspection. Let's see what's going on in our little garden. This is the space that will eventually be, hopefully, a permanent asparagus and strawberry bed. But I pulled back the row covers so we can see what's sprouting, but also look at the blooms on all of these squashes, and there's some zucchinis, all kind of things that I have planted in here just to see if I could grow anything for the fall. And you can see I have an inspector that is thrilled that I have rolled back the row covers so he can walk on everything. Yeah. Okay, let's take a peek. So I have little tags, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything because they wear off. Right here are some little patty pan squashes. Let's see if I can show you. There are babies. I'm really excited because this year, for some reason, the bugs just destroyed my patty pans before they could make, and that was pretty frustrating. The same with my okra. This is my first year trying to grow the Jing variety, and they just did not survive the pests early in the spring and through the summer. So finally, these guys are coming up, and I hope it stays warm enough that they can keep growing and I get a few pieces of okra. That would be really nice. Right here along the fence, I've got some Malabar spinach. That is supposed to be something that likes the warmer weather. We've never had Malabar spinach before, but it's supposed to be a good warm climate crop. And you'll see I have some varieties of peas that are going to grow up the fence. And then I have some beans further down. Let's go take a peek. So I've got a couple of varieties of beans, bush beans, that I'm just really hopeful will make at least a few beans. If it's not enough for us to eat, to be able to at least save the seeds to plant again next year. Under my row cover, I managed to start some seedlings for some lettuces and some kale and chard, and some of them survived. I need to remember this for next time, that probably direct sowing is going to be the way to go for me, because tending to a bunch of seedlings and getting the timing right for either up-potting them or getting them in the ground is pretty challenging for me. But here, let's see, this is lettuce leaf basil. These are mustards. A couple of chards. They seem to be doing really well with being transplanted. I do see a lot of weed seeds coming up, so that's great. Here I have some cabbages that I was trying to sprout. My cabbage seedlings pretty much went kaput. But it looks like I've got some sprouts coming up in among the weeds. So as they get bigger, I'll be able to tell what are weeds to pull and which ones are cabbages to actually baby them. And hopefully be able to grow at least a couple of cabbages this year would be really nice. So the same thing here. I planted some kohlrabi. I'm not really sure if any of it is coming up because it looks like I've got a couple of sprouts coming up, but I'm not sure. I have to wait till it gets bigger before I know what's a weed and what's a sprout. The same thing with my lettuce. I'm not seeing any of that lettuce coming up. I do have a lot of mustard seed. I believe the mustard seed, yeah, I tripped and spilled, so I made quite a bit of a mess. There's a little patch. But I'm going to wait until they get bigger, and then where I find empty spaces, I will just transplant the seedlings. I've got some dino kale. That grew really well for me, surprisingly well into the summer, which is surprising. I think I must have just absolutely scattered this arugula but it is coming up like gangbusters. I don't know if you can see the ants. Fire ants are the bane of any type of gardening or any type of just wanting to be outside in Florida. If you've never been bit by a fire ant, count yourself lucky, because it is terrible. And generally when I'm trying to garden, I get several bites on me at a time, because even if I'm wearing shoes, they will climb over your shoes and still get up into your pants or over your gloves. They are relentless, and it's just part of farming or growing anything in Florida. Oh look, I hope you can see. I have a bunch of little sprouts for my rainbow chard. I've never grown perpetual chard, but I see some sprouts coming up there. What do we have here? Some tiny baby spinach sprouts I see coming up. I think I see lettuce sprouts. I'll have to keep checking and keep you guys posted. I'm really excited at the prospect of growing carrots. I've watched a lot of videos that say you're supposed to cover them while they germinate, so let's take a peek. And I have no idea what I'm looking for. I see some sprouts, but I don't know if it's carrots or weeds. Maybe you guys know. I am going to pull that off and water everything really well and just see what happens. Oh, I have some beet sprouts coming up. These are all radish varieties. I see they're sprouting really well. That's exciting. Check out some of my other little seedlings I've got going on here. I have some peppers that, again, I just really hope it stays at least warm enough for them to grow a little bit and maybe give me a couple peppers before it gets cold. I have a little baby nasturtium plant. They did not like the heat this summer, so I thought I would try to grow them again in the fall. And further down, I've got more little baby pepper plants, more of the lettuce leaf basil. That is supposed to be really good for using, just like you would use big pieces of lettuce for wraps or sandwiches. I'm excited to try that. I have a few baby tomato plants. They are cherry tomatoes, and cherries really do well in Florida, and so I was hoping that they would be able to come up too and also make me some tomatoes before it gets too cold. We'll see. Over there's some more peppers. I didn't mention in my first farm tour that I still have pepper plants over there. On that side of the bed, there are banana peppers and corbachi peppers. I'll go over there and let you guys take a peek at that. And still a ton of basil. And a bee just about knocked my phone out of my hand. There are some weeds. Let me show you one. So this little guy right here is bindweed, and you do not want to let him have his way. There is one bindweed that got tangled up with the basil, and I just didn't do anything about it. And let me see if I can show you how it has just taken over. One little weed has grown up over my archway. It's climbing over this one. It's just very invasive, and it will choke out your plants. I wanted to grow some more sunflowers and a couple of other things. I planted some seeds when I cleared out this corner of this bed probably a couple of months ago. And what I'm seeing coming up is zinnias, because that was what was here, and so it looks like it's self-seeded, and I'm gonna have a lot more zinnias. So these pepper plants probably could use some support. They're hanging out of the bed, but you see they still have blooms on them. In tropical places, I believe pepper plants just grow like bushes and are perennials. But let me see if I can show you this little guy. By little, I mean huge. That's a corbachi pepper. They get really big and they turn red, and they're really sweet and good for using like bell peppers. You can stuff them. Otherwise, I've just been using them like bell peppers and chopping them up with other peppers for different recipes. And I just noticed this holy basil is actually doing fairly well. holy basil, also known as Tulsi basil, is supposed to be really good for teas and has a really unique scent. As far as I know, I might have the wrong thing because I'm not so wowed by the scent as all these other gardeners claim to be wowed by the scent of Tulsi basil. I don't know. Is it just me? Is something wrong with my nose? And I just noticed some flowers I want to show you guys. So this is my little makeshift bed. I didn't get a close-up of it in the first tour, but it is covered in vines and weeds. There was one tomato plant that I thought was going to grow and do really well. It has gotten tall, but it's definitely been struggling the whole time. It's now twisted up with vines, and I just don't think it's going to actually make any tomatoes for me. I do still want to try again next year. I'm going to keep trying to see if I can grow tomatoes, either starting them way earlier so that I can get more tomatoes off of them before the heat and the pests get too bad in the summer. But also I still want to keep trying to grow them in the fall as well and just see what works better for our climate. This mess of basil, weeds, and zinnias is kind of hilarious. Oh, I see marigolds in there too. But these flowers, let me get a good one. These flowers are so cute. I don't remember the variety, of course, because that's how I roll. But I have saved a ton of zinnia seeds, and I can't wait to just throw them everywhere and let them come up. My favorite one so far, this one's tiny and has little spider webs. Look at that. You just go, little spider. Is this candy stripe zinnia. This one's really tiny, but they're so cute. So back in the spring, I took a sweet potato that I had grown last year, and it was already starting to have some sprouts on it. So I encouraged it to grow some slips, and I got 3 or 4 good slips off of it. Not enough to make like a really big harvest, but I just stuck them in this bare spot in this raised bed and let them go. And if you've ever grown sweet potatoes, you know that the vines just go everywhere. They have climbed all over this bed. They've climbed out of the bed. They have wound themselves up the trellises and up other plants and just taken over. Ideally, I'll be able to grow them over in my market style garden next year and give them a lot of room to just ramble wherever they need to ramble. Wow. Well, that's kind of sad. So I think I'm going to give the sweet potatoes a little more time, because hopefully they still have time to grow some more, and hopefully the fire ants won't destroy them before they are ready for me to pick, maybe in another couple weeks. Here's a close-up shot of the greenhouse. Let's go inside. I'm going to go ahead and warn you that it is a hot mess in there. So, it is currently full of cardboard. There is a table back there that I like to use to sit at whenever I'm starting seeds or up potting, but we have gotten a lot of boxes over the last few weeks. These will all be used somewhere in the garden, hopefully in the cottage garden. What I want to do is lay down the cardboard and then cover it with wood chips or whatever other mulch I can use, just mostly to kill the weeds for now until I'm ready to put in plants. I have these little shelves over here. These were reused from out of our house. It's a sort of sunny area that might work for starting some seeds, but you have to rotate them pretty often, and I haven't had that great of success leaving anything there for very long. Okay, so here are my supplies for my next little project. I have everything loaded up in Coco, the gorilla cart, And here is my seed stash. If you wondered, I keep them separated by seasons. Here's one of the containers that I'm going to try growing some lettuce in. You can see I stabbed holes in the bottom of it with an ice pick, and I have a little assortment. So these containers are from baby spinach and spring mix that I buy for my little house bunnies, and I've saved the containers to use as little mini greenhouses through the winter. I've seen this idea from a lot of different gardeners, just using all kinds of containers to grow things in the winter and to make into little mini greenhouses, so we're going to give it a shot. The reason I am trying to grow so much lettuce in so many different ways is because I have fat little bunny rabbits that need to eat. Also, we would like fresh greens through the winter. My chickens would love it too. And another question that you might be asking is, how do I feed all of my plants? What do I use for fertilizer? Well, my little house bunnies, they definitely eat a lot, but rabbit manure is something that you can use straight. You don't have to cure it like chicken and horse manure. And so I will use that either in my beds, or I will make a compost tea out of it, just soaking the pellets in some water for a day or so, and then using that to pour over the plants as a fertilizer. So while the bunnies eat a lot, they also provide me with a lot of fertilizer for my garden. So here's the lettuce that I'm using. I actually managed to save seeds from my Freckles lettuce. What's the name of it? Freckles romaine lettuce, and that was something that also grew really well, surprisingly, well into the summer. And then I've got some more leaf lettuce, and these are 2 salad bowl mixes that I'm excited to try for the first time. So I'm just putting a layer of this potting soil in the container, not very deep because the lettuces are pretty shallow rooted, so hopefully this will work. Pretty much everything I do is an experiment, and if I get any food out of it, great. Otherwise, it's just kind of fun to play around. As you can see though, I am a klutz and I spilled a bunch of seeds down here, so I'm going to scoop that up, and that is what's going to go in this container. So I wiped up as many of those Freckles romaine lettuce seeds as I could get, and I just sprinkled them all over the top of the soil. And now I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of soil on top, not very much, because you don't want the seeds to be very deep or they won't germinate. And then I'm going to water this gently and put the lid on like so. And there we have a mini greenhouse. Okay, here's what I have so far. And as I continue to buy greens for the bunnies, I'll start new containers. And you can see I wrote on top of them so that you can see what it is that's growing and when I planted them. And also what I'm hoping is some of the plants will still be healthy into the spring, and I'll be able to transplant some of them into the raised beds, and they'll be able to continue growing and get bigger, because with this setup I will be harvesting everything as baby greens in these tiny little greenhouses. I'll show you where I'm going to put them in the greenhouse. Okay, even with all the windows open in the greenhouse, it still gets pretty hot in here, so I'll keep an eye on the temperature, especially in the afternoons, to make sure I don't need to move them out. Because I do not want to cook the seeds, and I don't want them to be stressed. But this is where they're going to go for now, and I'll keep you guys posted on their progress. I'm not really sure how to end my videos yet, but thank y'all for hanging out with me today. I hope that you enjoyed seeing more of the garden, and maybe you learned something about gardening. If there's anything else you want me to talk about in future videos or share more about, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to be sure not to miss any future videos. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye. This is not enough for us to eat. Wow.